It's the 7th week. We're going to tackle chapter 10 and 11 today. But first, I want to make sure that you know where the character history is. This is the assignments page for your class, and the character history is right there. There we go. Maybe there we go. Okay. So what you need to do is you need to fill this thing out and send it back to me, email it to me, and then I'll put it on the website under your name so that people can counsel you and put the there it is. Okay, can put their notes underneath your name, showing that they counseled you. And that way you can look at what other people have done. It's not all that long, as you can see. You need to make up a fictional name. You need to make up a fictional problem that that your client or that your character has. You know, just be creative. Your paper is going to be about what is wrong with your character. So there's the assignments page. There we go. And the character history is right here. As you can see, if we look at this, your fictional biography is worth 50 points. Your paper's worth 100 points. If you don't do a fictional biography, you don't have anything to write about. That's 150 points. That's a lot of points. And also your counseling sessions, there are 10 of them. That's 100 points as well. So that's half of your the points for this class have to do with the counseling sessions. So if you don't do the counseling sessions, you can't possibly pass the class. So this is something that you need to do. What I want you to do is Zoom, email, do your counseling sessions any way that you possibly can. You can do them over the telephone. You can do them by email. You can do them by Zoom or Skype. Any way that you can. This is probably the wave of the future, as we talked about before. Online counseling. So there you go. There's the character histories. Topic covered in counseling session. Oh, here. This is what I want you to cover in the counseling sessions. If I can make it open up, there you go. So what you'll need to write down this is what I want your notes to look like. So from the history, you can get the current symptoms, the past psychiatric history, and the social developmental history of the individual. From the interview, you need to give me a synopsis of the interview, talk about the client's strengths, talk about the client's goals, talk about what your diagnosis is. It may be different from what the client thinks it is, and come up with a plan. The other thing that I want you to determine is, are they a potential harm to themselves? Do they have anger issues? Do they want to attack somebody else? And you need to tell me how long your session lasted. If you did it by Zoom. If you did it by email, you just put down their email, I guess. So there you go. And this is under assignments. Topics to be covered. There we go. Topics to be covered in counseling sessions. There you go. It's that hard. It's that difficult. It is that easy. So let's go ahead and get started. We're going to start with Chapter 10, developing a deeper understanding. In ordinary conversation, people often communicate in verbal shorthand, only discussing topics in a superficial way. We rarely ask for more information. We assume that people use words the same way that we do. It is important for the practitioners to listen for gaps in information. Notice points and words that are not clear. Ask about how conclusions are reached. A lot of times, if they leave something out, it's because it was too painful to talk about. It's something that they're embarrassed about, that they would like to hide. So the gaps in the conversation are really quite important. If you're talking about somebody who has a bruise over their eye and they say, well, I went home last night and my husband and I got into an argument. And when I got up this morning, I dressed real fast before he woke up and I came over here. Well, where did the bruise come from? That may be what they don't want to talk about. And that's, of course, the gap we're talking about. Developing deeper understanding. I understand that you're feeling depressed. What is depression like for you? And the reality is that if we are talking about depression, depression looks different for everybody. Males have different depressive symptoms than females do. You may think that depression looks like sadness. It's beyond sadness. If they have a frown on their face, if they're crying, they're probably not depressed, because when you're depressed, you tend to have a blank look on your face, and that's how it manifests itself. Males sometimes will do something aggressive. They will be violent. When they're depressed, they may drink or take drugs. So it's a good thing to ask somebody how depression is like for them. I hear you are concerned about your children's behavior. Can you give me some examples? I notice that several people in the group are looking at the floor. Will one of you share what you are feeling? When behaviors, feelings, experiences, and the nature of the problem, challenge, or situation are clear, then changes can be more easily made. The meaning of words and body language can be explored. The basis of conclusions can be enlightening. Using questions to expand and clarify is important to families and groups. You said your mom doesn't like you. Will you tell me what makes you think that? I don't think others care about finishing what we started. Will you tell me what is happening that makes you think that? I know my husband doesn't love me. Will you give me some examples of this behavior that leads you to feel that way? The fact that he holds hands with other women. A client must be willing to explore more deeply. A client must feel comfortable and safe. It can be useful for the practitioner to ask about the client's hesitancy to share, but the practitioner should not push clients to share. Gaining further information may help in establishing a trusting relationship. Interesting picture, because as we see, this young man has his legs crossed, and she's the counselor, and he's the one that's being counseled. But as you can see, he's got his legs crossed. One of the things, and you can see his hands are gripping the sides of the chair. Almost fervently, and so one of the things that we can see from this is that because he's got his legs crossed, he is keeping himself inside. He's not giving her the information that she wants. He's holding himself back, and that's what the crossed legs mean. If we look at her legs, she's got one leg out here. I'm not sure where her other leg is, but she's got an open stance, and she's looking for information. And he's got his legs crossed. So if you are a counselor and you're doing counseling, one of the things that you need to do, we talked about leaning forward. The other thing you need to make sure that you do is not shut yourself off like this individual has. If she's the client and he's the counselor, then he is in the wrong. For one thing, he's got his hand way back here. But he's got himself shut off from the other individual. Silence may be useful in encouraging clients to explore further. Silence allows time for processing. Feelings may be experienced more deeply during silent periods. The more intense the feelings, the more silent time may be needed to experience them. Some people need more silent time to process their thoughts and feelings. And this is kind of tough for select individuals. Now, I'm not exactly sure how the Dene people deal with silence, but the dominant white culture does not like silence. And for that reason, a lot of times, if the counselor is white, or if they have been watching too much television, they're not white, but they've been watching too much television, they try to fill the air with as much noise as possible. They get nervous when people are silent. I think I told you the story. I had a friend from New York City who decided he was going to major in American Indian Studies. So he was at New York University, and he did his master's research on the Dene people. So he came out to the Navajo Nation, and he was interviewing people. And he was interviewing elders. And being from New York City, of course, and being white, he didn't like silence. And so when he was trying to interview some of the Dene elders, one of the things that he had a problem doing, well, one of the things that happened was he would sit there without anybody saying anything, and that made him nervous. So at one point, he tried to get the elder to speak to him, and the elder told him, "Well, you know, Ralph, your questions are so interesting. I want to give you the best answer I possibly can, and that's why I think so much about this." And what the elder was doing was chastising him for trying to accelerate the process. Silence is good if you can handle it. Some people need quiet time to think. Silence should be used purposefully. Observe your client's reaction to silence. Some may feel rejected. Some may just feel uncomfortable, especially if they're white. Each situation and each client needs to be thoughtfully considered. To develop deeper understanding of clients, besides focusing on their challenges, you need to focus on their strengths, their resources, their positive factors. Many clients may want their challenges to be understood before they move on to their strengths. And that's usually the reason that they're there. They're not there to talk about their strengths, they're there to talk about their challenges. But what you need to do is you need to understand how they can survive in that environment. By focusing on client strengths, resources, and other positive factors, the practitioner can help clients feel hopeful, positive, and more able to cope. Highlighting what clients have already achieved shows that the practitioner understands and supports the efforts that they have made. The story that they meant to tell you was the story of their challenges. The story that they may have told you was the fact that they have strengths as a resource, and that's what you need to show them. The fact that just because they're talking about their challenges and their potential failures, it doesn't have it. It also shows that they have strengths and that they can withstand whatever the problem is. What do you do well? This is questions helpful in exploring strengths and positive factors. What do you do well? What do you like about yourself? What does your family do that is fun? What are some good things about this organization? Tell me about friends who have helped you in the past. What have you done that you are proud of? Empowerment is achieved when clients know that they have the knowledge, skills, competencies, and resources to make decisions, solve problems, and achieve goals. As people use their strengths and resources to face and deal with problems and challenges, they gain confidence. Let me give you an example. When I joined the military, they made me a medic. They made me a medic, and then they made me a laboratory technician. Well, one of the jobs of a laboratory technician is to draw blood. Now, drawing blood is not the easiest thing in the world. you're using a needle, you're using a hypodermic needle that has a hole in the end of it, and the point is beveled. In other words, it's angled. So what you have to do is, when you're drawing blood, what you have to do is you have to take that beveled portion of your needle and you have to seat it inside the vein so that the blood is running into the needle and up into the syringe or tube that you're dealing with. This isn't the easiest thing in the world. First of all, you have to be able to visualize where your bevel is when you stick. And the other thing is that you have to be steady enough to be able to hold that in position so that the needle's not moving back and forth. You're not chopping this guy's vein up. And not only that, but sometimes you have to change tubes. And so you have to be stable enough to hold that needle and the bevel inside the vein while you change tubes. And of course, you have to pull the tube off and then push the tube on. And of course, it can move back and forth. So you have to be strong enough, you have to be stable enough to be able to do this without bruising your patient. Not the easiest thing in the world. I can remember when I first started that there were a lot of people that had a lot of trouble with this. But I didn't. And the reason I didn't is because my hand is so steady. And the reason my hand is so steady is because, well, it's genes for one thing, but the other reason is because I'm not affected by caffeine. And you could see people when after they had their coffee, they'd get the shakes. They'd get or if they needed caffeine, they'd get the shakes. Sometimes after they had the caffeine, it would give them a little bit of a tremor. But I don't have that. So I became known as the person who could draw blood. So a lot of times when nobody else could get somebody, I would go in and I'd be able to draw blood from somebody that nobody else could draw blood from. That gave me confidence. I knew that of all the people that I knew, all the people that were drawing blood, I was one of the best ones. And that was just the confidence. A lot of times, it was really difficult to get blood from somebody, but because I had the confidence, I was able to do it. I had been empowered by my ability to draw blood. And still at my age, I'm 72 years old, my hand is as steady as a rock. No shake to it. So connecting strengths with empowerment, tell me about something you completed that seemed difficult, like climbing a rock wall. What skills have helped you solve previous challenges? How have you resolved previous challenges? After reflecting the client's strengths, the practitioner can invite the client to catalog other instances when they have actively participated in solving problems. This will enhance their confidence and sense of empowerment. Tell me about something you completed that seemed difficult. Of the things you have already done to resolve this problem, tell me about what has worked well, even for a brief period of time. I'm not exactly sure why I put that picture in there. Looks like he's trying to knock her out. That's a half Nelson, I think. No, it's a full Nelson. What are some of the things you learned from working with past challenges? What skills helped you solve past challenges? How have you resolved previous challenges? Demonstrating respect. Respect can be demonstrated by expressing understanding and validating the client's story, by showing interest in the client's thoughts and feelings, wants, needs, and goals, by creating and maintaining a collaborative environment, by asking about strengths, resources, potential, and capacities, and by identifying the client's strengths. With all the trained professionals in this group, I am confident that we can find a way to resolve this. You've tried to solve this problem. Will you tell me about other things you have considered but haven't used yet? You seem quite angry about how your boss has been behaving. It must be a tough place to work. How do you think I might help you? When you resolve this problem, what are some things that will be different in your family? You have told me about the many ways you have worked on this challenge. Who else in the agency might be willing to work with us to resolve this problem? As I understand it, you have done a lot of thinking about the problems this organization is facing. You have talked to a number of people about their understanding of the problem, and have decided to commit time and energy to resolving this problem. You have taken some important steps in problem solving. And that is the end of chapter 10. So let's go on to chapter 11. Chapter 11 is readiness and motivation. Starting with research by Prochaska in 1999, researchers have identified 5 stages of readiness to change using smoking cessation, weight reduction, and sobriety studies. The first stage is pre-contemplation stage, where they haven't even started thinking about changing yet. The second is contemplation, where they're thinking about changing. The third is preparation, where they are preparing to change. The next is doing something about changing, and the last is maintenance. And of course, all of these were determined by looking at smoking cessation programs, weight reduction programs, and sobriety studies. If you've ever had a conversation with somebody who was an addict, somebody who was an alcoholic, you know, the first thing that, the first time you confront them, usually they say, oh, I'm not an alcoholic. Alcoholics do this, this, and this, and I don't do this, this, and this. Therefore, I'm not an alcoholic. And then when something negative happens, then they say, then if you ask them about being an alcoholic or having problems with drinking, they'll say, you know, maybe I do have a problem, but it's not very severe. And then the next time, after the same thing happens again, then they go, you know, maybe I do need to see if I can't slow down a little bit. They never want to stop. They just want to slow down a little bit. So then you get them into some kind of a program. You send them to AA or whatever, and then they start taking action because they see other people that are alcoholics and the trajectory that they took, and they know from talking to these individuals that that only negative consequences can come if they don't slow down. And then, of course, they go through the whole program. They stop drinking. They've stopped drinking for a select period of time. And the next thing that happens is they need to maintain this. And this is one of the reasons why in AA they will give you a 1 month coin. They give you a 3 month coin, I think, and a 6 month coin. Trying to keep this is part of the maintenance, showing you that you can do it. Pre-contemplation. In the pre-contemplation stage, the individual denies or lacks understanding of his problem behavior. Since the individual does not recognize their problem, they do not see the need for change. They may blame their problems on others. They may only agree to see a practitioner because someone else has suggested or required it, like the law. A person who abuses substances, but despite many arrests for driving under the influence, does not consider themselves to have a problem that needs to be addressed. This would be somebody in the pre-contemplation stage. A gang that lives in a community with high levels of violence who believe they can continue perpetrating violence and not be personally affected, they're in the pre-contemplation stage. A husband who comes along to counseling because his wife thinks they have problems but doesn't see any problems himself, they're in the pre-contemplation stage. A wife who wants to end her marriage and comes to counseling to ease her guilt, maybe she is going to counseling in order to tell herself, I did everything I could to save this marriage. I even went to counseling. She's in the pre-contemplation stage. A person who has a serious health crisis and has been told to change their eating habits, but states, I've always eaten this way, I am not going to change, they're in the pre-contemplation stage. Practitioners should focus on raising clients' awareness of the urgency of the issues and the pain or fear that's involved. Counselor, if you continue drinking, what do you think your life will be like in 5 years? I've worked with people who have changed their eating habits and become healthier. A person in the pre-contemplation stage isn't interested in setting goals. The target must be to get the client to think about changing their lives and whether it will improve their lives. The second stage of readiness for change is contemplation. The individual in this stage weighs the pros and cons in making a change, but they're not quite ready to move ahead with making a change. Practitioners can discuss the advantages and disadvantages of changing. It is helpful to identify barriers or challenges to making changes. The practitioner can propose small steps toward considering a change. Practitioner, as you think about giving up marijuana, what do you consider would be the advantages and the disadvantages? I'm not ready to make any changes right now. I have wondered if some of the problems on this team are because I am kind of dominating. But on the other hand, I think we get more accomplished because I am pushy. My boss thinks I should get over my fear of making speeches, but I am just not sure if it is something I can do. I keep getting sent to the principal's office for fighting, and then I can't play in the next football game. I don't like getting in trouble, but I have to stand up for myself. We have discussed forming a committee to address the problems in this organization, but I wonder if we would really accomplish anything. Practitioners can help clients identify barriers or challenges to making changes and also strengths that will be helpful if they decide to change. Practitioners might ask if there are small steps they might consider that may lead to a greater willingness to change in the near future. The third stage of readiness for change is preparation. The clients are ready to change and are looking for information. They may have already made some changes and are wanting to make more progress. They may have made some small steps and are ready to move forward, making goals. Generally, people need to be in this stage before a major change will be possible. However, usually you get them right here in the pre-contemplation stage or the contemplation stage. Either they're in denial or they are thinking about it, but they don't think it can happen. This is the best place to get them, but it's unfortunately most of your clients are going to be in the previous two stages, the pre-contemplation and the contemplation stage. If you get them in one of those stages, sometimes you can accelerate them into the preparation stage, but it doesn't always happen. And it's not a failure. They really don't want to, until they decide themselves that they want to change, nobody's going to be able to force them to make that change. Generally, people need to be in this stage before a major change will be possible. The fourth stage is the action stage. Clients are ready to take specific steps and may need little or no support from practitioner. If the practitioner assumes that clients are at this stage and yet they are still in a previous stage, the practitioner will likely feel frustrated. Clients may feel that they should be ready to take steps that they are not yet ready to take. Only about a third of clients come to a practitioner at this stage, which means that 2/3 of all your clients are going to be in a previous stage, not in this stage. And of course, this is really the only way that you can change them. If they're in the preparation stage, a lot of times you can move them into the action stage. But they're only going to change in this stage, the action stage. An obese client, when faced with life-threatening health issues, joins Weight Watchers, learns to follow a program, and loses a significant amount of weight. That's the action stage. A parent whose children have been removed from their home because the parent used harsh, abusive means of discipline says that they will learn other ways of discipline, willingly goes to a parenting class, and talks with a practitioner about ways to use what they have learned. A child realizes that they will not be able to play on a team without earning passing grades and starts attending an after-school tutoring class in order to bring up their grades. A task group establishes a clear goal, identifies steps to achieve their goal, and talks with a practitioner about ways to work together most effectively. Maintenance the pull to return to old behaviors is extremely strong. Clients need to develop ways to cope with temptations and to reward day-to-day successes. It is helpful to explore how past successes have been maintained and develop ways to maintain current changes. It must be remembered that this stage can be difficult. The old behavior was maintained before because it was rewarding or comfortable. Clients need to learn to cope with old behaviors and temptations for the long haul. And about the only way you can do this is to change their habits. So eating the apple would be a new habit that they would have. Not grabbing a hold of the cake and whenever you're at the gas station, you pick up a Little Debbie's. You can't do that. You've got to change your habits. I'm not going to eat those empty calories. An organization develops more effective ways of problem solving and plans regular meetings so potential problems can be addressed before they become bigger issues. An individual learns to stop procrastinating on projects and makes plans to check in with someone who will provide honest feedback about whether the problem seems to be reappearing. A person who has had serious problems with alcohol abuse continues to be involved with AA. I have a friend who hasn't had a drink in 17 years, and this guy goes to every AA meeting he can find. That's the only way he can do it. I had the same friend once told me that every morning when he wakes up, he has to convince himself, he has to think specifically that he's not going to drink today. And he hasn't had a drink in 17 years. A person has lost weight with the help of Weight Watchers and continues to attend meetings at least once a month. Relapse is common and preparation for it needs to be part of the process. Relapse is so common when change has occurred that some practitioners add it as a stage of change. When relapse occurs, clients may return to any of the previous stages. It is the job of the practitioner to determine which stage the client is in. Termination is the point at which there is no temptation to return to old behavior. Let me give you a quick example. If your way of coping is to run away, as long as there's no crisis taking place, it's easy not to go back to that coping technique. But then once a crisis occurs, then the individual is very likely, despite the fact that they haven't run away for years, to go back to the old coping technique. And that's what relapse is all about. So their old way of dealing with things was to get away from the problem. Now, of course, once a really serious problem occurs, all of a sudden they take off. They've gone back to their old way of coping. Assessing stages of change. Do you currently have a problem with? If yes, then the client is in contemplation, preparation, or action stage. Or no, if no, then the client is in the pre-contemplation stage. Do you intend to deal with the problem? If the answer is someday, then the client is in the contemplation stage. If the answer is in the next few weeks or a specific date, then they are in the preparation stage. If they say right now, then they're in the action stage. Do you intend to deal with the problem? If the answer to the question was no, then ask, what leads you to say that? If the answer is because it is not a problem, the client is in the pre-contemplation stage. If the client responds because I have already dealt with the problem, the client is in the maintenance stage. Another theory that can be used to assess readiness or ability to make changes is social cognitive theory. This theory was developed by Albert Bandura and was originally called the social learning theory. This theory considers the impact of the following factors as to readiness for change: the environment that they're in, their personal self, and their behavior. Personal factors include everything: physical makeup, brain structure, cognitive capacity, beliefs, self-concept, goals, emotions. These are all personal factors. Personal factors deal with how you interact with others. Are you focused more inward on yourself? Are you focused more outward on others? And we see this guy with bare feet. Does that look strange to you that he's sitting around with bare feet? Are we not used to seeing bare feet? Wait a minute. Oh, they've got shoes on. Okay. Research has shown the behavior affects brain structures. That's according to Mathiak and Weber in 2006. Long-haul truck drivers have different brain structures than theoretical physicists. Behavior also affects physical makeup, as someone who is sedentary will look different from a marathoner. And of course, this is the marathoner, and this is the person who is sedentary. This is what the person would look like if they were a marathoner, and this is what the person would look like if they weren't the marathoner. As you can see, he's got the same face, but a different shaped body. When assessing a person's readiness or ability to make changes from the point of view of the social cognitive theory, several dimensions are considered. Does the environment support or encourage changed behavior? Does the person think that they have the capacity to make the change? Does the client believe that there is something to be gained from making the change rather than maintaining the current behavior? Now, this is something that you need to think about. This is something that you need to be thinking about. If say, you've got an individual that has a drinking problem, if they have a drinking problem and all the people around them are drinkers and think that it's positive for that individual to drink, then the environment doesn't support the changed behavior. Once upon a time, we were stationed in Europe, and I was playing on a soccer team, an American soccer team, and we played against a French soccer team. And after the game, we went into their clubhouse, and we were all expected to toast people with drinks. It started out with beer, and then it went to harder liquors. But I don't drink, and I didn't drink at the time. And they wouldn't accept that. I had to leave in order not to get into a fight because I refused to drink with those guys. Now, that environment did not support non-drinkers, so I had to leave. That's an example of an environment that does not encourage changing your drinking behavior. Does the person think that they have the capacity to make the change? And of course, that has to do with what's going on in the person's mind. Does the client believe that there is something to be gained from making the change rather than maintaining their current behavior? And of course, that would have to do with, is it worth it to me, or is it not worth it to me? I've been around individuals that, because of their position in life, they were high-ranking officers. The idea was that it wasn't worth it not to drink, because it caused a lot more problems not drinking than the drinking did. They were expected to drink. The practitioner must take into account all factors that influence the client: family, group, or organization. Do they feel compelled to solve the problem? The amount of discomfort created by the problem impacts the motivation. Environmental factors can influence motivation as well. The relationship of the client and the practitioner influence motivation. Positive regard can increase motivation, as can the practitioner's genuineness, the focus on the issues, and the regular feedback. Problems in the relationship must be dealt with non-defensively by both parties. but especially the practitioner. It is important for the practitioner to regularly ask for feedback from the client to ensure that the progress he or she perceives is actual and not illusional. And the reality is that you will be looking for change, and possibly you'll be deluding yourself into thinking, yes, they are changing because I'm such a good counselor. That's you. Well, you don't have to say that I'm such a good counselor, but the reality is that you will be thinking, yes, they are trying to change, and it may be completely illusional. Discounting is a cognitive distortion that allows clients to deny or minimize the existence of the problem, and we see this all the time. We saw this constantly in the emergency room. Somebody would come in drunk again. They came in drunk last weekend, and you would say, do you think maybe you have a drinking problem? And they'd say, no, I don't have a drinking problem. I only drink on the weekends, and it's only when there's something important happening, like St. Patrick's Day. Yeah, it's St. Patrick's Day, and I got drunk on Valentine's Day, and then I had a fight with my wife the next weekend, and those kinds of things. That we would run into that all the time. And of course, I wasn't the one doing I wasn't talking to them. It was the doctor or the nurses that were talking to them, but they would be in denial about having a problem. 4 levels of discounting: thinking there is no problem, of course; thinking the problem is not significant but present; thinking that the problem does not have a solution; they will still block your motivation; and thinking that others have changed the problem, that he or she cannot do it. This could be them being in the contemplation stage. Yeah, geez, I'd like to change, but there's just no way I can do it. An individual who thinks being 50 pounds overweight is not a problem. A family that believes disciplining children by hitting them with a belt isn't a problem. A task group that thinks that the fact that they haven't started working on an assignment that is due in a few days is not a problem. A business that thinks the fact that their product isn't completely safe is not a problem. The guy that is 50 pounds overweight accepts it as a problem, but not as a serious one. The abusive belt-hitting family might not worry about their discipline technique because 1, they never do it in public, and 2, it doesn't happen that often, and 3, this must be the right way to discipline because their family has always done it this way going back 5 generations. The task group says that getting started late is a problem, but not a serious one, because students work on things at the last minute all the time, and they still get them done because they are so brilliant. The business admits that their product isn't completely safe, but since most people are not negatively affected by it, it isn't really important to change it. Being 50 pounds overweight is a serious problem, but everyone in the family is overweight, and there's nothing that can be done about it. Disciplining children by hitting them with a belt may be considered a serious problem by some blue noses in the community, but it is the only effective way to make their children behave. We wanted to get a good grade on this project and knew that starting late may mean that won't be possible, but everyone was too busy. We just couldn't do it any other way. The business made a statement that selling a product that is unsafe is a risk, but it is a profitable product, and they don't know any way to improve the safety. Thinking that others have changed the problem, but they cannot do it. I am concerned about being overweight, and I know that my friend lost weight recently, but losing weight isn't something I can do. We haven't been able to discipline our children except by hitting them, but our neighbors took a parenting course and learned several new ways to discipline their children. For this assignment, we weren't able to start working until right before the project was due, but some of the other groups in the class somehow found enough time to work together before the project was due, and they got better grades than we did. We haven't found any way to be profitable except by continuing to sell an unsafe product, but there are other similar companies who have found alternative, safe, and profitable products. The practitioner's job is to get the client to accept the problem, that the problem exists, the problem is serious, and that the problem is solvable by the client. Most people are uncomfortable with change, so getting past discounting may take time. Strengths, capacity, and resources have a significant effect on motivation. Clients who have many personal strengths, good social support, and adequate resources tend to be motivated. Resilience is an important strength. Level of stress and demands reduces or enhances motivation. Clients who have faced extensive stress recently, have high stress currently, have depleted their resources, and may have difficulty dealing with new stress. Experience teaches the clients that they have the ability to affect change. Experience leads to self-efficacy, which leads to hope. Another element of hope is an internal locus of control. They believe that their behavior will produce the desired changes. People with an external locus of control believe that control is external and they have no power to influence it. Thus, anything that they do has no connection to the outcome. There is no way that they can fix themselves because everything is external. Nothing is internal. Practitioners bring their previous experience, education, and beliefs about change to any meeting with clients. When change is not as quick or easy as clients want, practitioners provide support and encouragement that change is possible. Another element of help is the placebo effect. Another element of hope is the placebo effect. Research on counseling and medicine consistently shows that when people believe that something will help them, it often is helpful, no matter if it did anything or not. And that is the end of the lecture. So I'll talk to you guys next week. Don't forget, get your histories in. We need to start, we'll start counseling at the beginning of April, I think. The last 5 weeks. So I think that's April. So you need to get your histories in. You need to write your paper and get those in. I'll see you next week. I think I will anyway. Next week is the 8th week. I think there's one more week and then we have spring break.